Hold up, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bet.
Welcome back, y'all. This is the Miscellaneous Minds Podcast. I'm your host, Jesus Dinero, here with my co-host,
Puma El Gato.
What do we got going on tonight, my man?
Let's talk about everything that happened during Beterbiev and Bivol 2. Let's get into it.
Look, man, this was a stacked card, as I'm sure a lot of you hardcore fans know. We had good fights. Some of them had to be switched out last moment for two of the fights, actually, that we're going to go over tonight. Shakur had a late replacement, given his opponent bowed out, given, I guess, he was sick or something like that. There weren't a whole lot of specifics on it. But basically, Shakur Stevenson was facing a late replacement. I believe it was on 3 days' notice. And Shakur Stevenson picked him apart, got him into the ninth round, was able to get the stoppage. And listen, I don't want to talk about this one all too much, only because I feel like constantly, and it's not Shakur's fault. I will say this. Shakur is constantly trying to face a lot of people who I will personally agree are, in fact, ducking him. That being said, listen, I don't think this is a great win for Shakur, not just because it's on 3 days' notice. It took him until the ninth round to get that guy in. Again, this guy came in on 3 days' notice. And I don't think it's a phenomenal win to begin with. It's not like a super big name. Dude had like a 14% knockout ratio. So it's not like he was facing some sort of killer. And just, yeah, he won. And, it's a name. And again, it sucks because it's not Shakur's fault. But, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do there. So I don't honestly want to spend a whole lot of time on that. Shakur got the win. He got the dub, ninth round stoppage. We're going to move past that one just because I don't feel like it was really proving anything to anybody. But that's what happened there. Now, the next fight that we're going to talk about is we got a heavyweight fight between Joseph Parker and Bakole. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to mispronounce the name, Bakole. And listen, Bakole had gone a few good-looking knockouts previous to this. In fact, he was being talked about as a potential up-and-comer for the heavyweight title. Somebody basically getting their name in the mix. I'll be honest with you. Yes, he did have a couple good-looking knockouts, but it wasn't against anybody major. Yes, he got a few, I believe one or two good names under there. Last time I checked his record. But it wasn't anything. I personally wasn't counting Bakole out. In fact, between Joseph Parker and Dubois, I was actually going to pick Parker. The reason being is, yes, Dubois had recently knocked out Anthony Joshua, and Dubois has been on quite the streak, but so has Joseph Parker. Now, I will admit Joseph Parker hasn't looked as good as a Dubois, but I do think that he has much more skills than does a Dubois. I feel like, yes, while Dubois is underrated, I feel like people look at Dubois as better than he actually is, and I know that sounds bad. I'm not trying to downplay Dubois, but I feel like Dubois really is just more power than anything else. Yes, he's got a little bit of technical skill mixed in there, but it's very, very, very rudimentary, if I'm being honest. I feel like Joseph Parker has much more I don't want to say upper class, but a little bit more closer to the top tier level in his boxing skills. He's not just a knockout artist. Yes, Joseph Parker can get those knockouts, but I do feel like he's got not just that under his belt. Where I feel like Dubois, I'm going to say it's 89 to 93% knockout power, and then, the additional is skill. Where with Joseph Parker, I feel like Joseph Parker's about 60-40, 60%, okay, let me change that up a little bit. 60% skill, 40% knockout power. I feel like there's a lot more technicality and there's a lot more ring generalship when it comes to Joseph Parker than there is a Dubois. And that's the reason why even Joseph against Dubois, I was actually going to pick Joseph, which I know would have been like a huge, underdog pick on my end, because I know a lot of people are kind of thinking Dubois was going to go up, and because a lot of people wanted to see Dubois rematch Usyk given the controversy in their last fight. That being said, listen, I was going to pick Joseph Parker. I believe Joseph Parker has enough of the skills to win, and I feel like to a little bit of a degree, he did kind of show that in his fight against Bakole. Again, not counting Bakole out. I think Bakole does have a lot of talent to get in there and do a lot of damage, but is it that top tier? I personally don't believe so. So Joseph Parker got him out of there in the second round, which I thought was a great showing for Joseph Parker. Again, Bakole is definitely not one of the top tier names in the heavyweight division, but he was making a name for himself. And this, just knocks him back a couple steps and pushes Joseph Parker up a little bit more. The question is, now that Usyk has basically said he's only got 2 more fights under his belt, are we going to see Joseph Parker get a shot at that now that he's won his match. Usyk had said whoever wins between Parker and Dubois, he would be more than happy to face the winner. We have a little bit of a difficulty now, given that Dubois didn't technically lose. He just bowed out because he had some injuries. But, we'll see how it goes. Either way, I think it was a good win for Joseph Parker. It was, while it wasn't one of the top tier names, it was a name that people had on the radar because Bakole has been coming up. So it was good to see Joseph Parker do his thing out there and get him out of there early. But what do you think about that, my man?
Well, first and foremost, I do actually at the very least want to give a shout out to not only Martin Bakole, but also Josh Padley. The fact that they were late coming replacements in, and especially in Martin Bakole's case, he was a week minimum, days maximum out replacement for Daniel Dubois. Then Daniel Dubois suffered in some kind of illness, and it wasn't entirely specified. But the fact of the matter is, he couldn't exactly make the cut for the fight. And Martin Bakole literally stepped in days prior to the actual fight happening. So I understand at the end of the day, it's still round 2 knockout for Martin Bakole. That's an L he's going to have to eat. These last minute replacements are pretty much a double-edged sword when it comes to the fight game. On the one hand, yes, the fight basically gets made, and yeah, it's a purse no matter what. Like, even if you lost the fight, you're still going to make some money at the end of the day. The worst case scenario, and probably the more realistic scenario, is that if you do come in as a last minute replacement, more likely you're going to have to eat that loss. But at the end of the day, and I guess it's a little bit of an unfortunate thing that happened, is that unfortunately that L is the circumstances surrounding the L, considering the fact that, again, Martin Bakole had to be days before the actual fight, had to get ready. The circumstances around that are unfortunately going to get washed by the wayside the more that time goes on. So people are going to look at that and see, he suffered that L against Joseph Parker. But at the very least, Martin Bakole can actually use the circumstances surrounding it, at least in the meantime, to try and sort of politic his way a little bit himself and getting in a better fight for that. So, and I think even Josh Padley, I believe his name was, the gentleman that fought Shakur Stevenson. Again, he didn't really have that much in the way of time to help prepare for the fight. But again, considering that he's probably on the lower tier name, the fact that he was able to do that in such a short amount of time, hopefully he can at least get a better deal out of that. Same way for Martin Bakole. Again, unfortunately that L is going to get, the circumstance around that L is going to get washed by the wayside. But hopefully he can leverage that into a better deal moving forward and say, look, I stepped for you days when this fight was going to get basically canceled and you were going to be short one more big fight in that card. I stepped up when time came to be. So shout out to Martin Bakole, shout out to Josh Padley. Hopefully more better deals will come out of this in the future for both of them.
Yeah, man. Again, shout out to both of them. They stepped up last minute, and you can't blame them too much for the L because again, they had a very limited amount of time to prepare for their opponents. Yes, a lot of these dudes are the backups, and we are kind of aware. They are aware of who they're going to be fighting. But a lot of times, it's not like it's necessarily like they're prepping for this specific fighter. They may have another fight that they were going to fight, and now because of a late replacement, now they have to fight this guy. So shout out to them for doing their thing. Let's get into the next fight that I want to talk about. There's a couple, actually two before, one before we get to the main event. Vergil Ortiz up against Imavov. Imavov proved to be a tricky and difficult customer because he gave Terence Crawford a run for his money, man. In fact, in a lot of people's minds, I still think the right man won, but I can see how the argument was being made. Imavov won in a lot of people's minds. I think Crawford deserves the win, but I could see how people would argue that Imavov won that fight. That being said, Vergil dominated. It's funny. I personally, before this fight happened, I didn't think Vergil. This is going to sound bad because I like Vergil. I didn't think Vergil had the skills to contend with the Terence Crawford. And if I'm being honest, if they fight, I still have Terence Crawford winning. But that being said, Vergil Ortiz handled his fight against Imavov a lot better than Terence Crawford did. Maybe it's just because Vergil Ortiz is used to getting in there and duking it out with someone and throwing big, heavy punches and is used to taking that damage, whereas Terence Crawford, he's more of a slick boxer, so yes, he does take some of that damage, but not quite as frequently as Vergil does. So maybe that's what it was, tough chin, so to speak. But I think Vergil Ortiz handled himself beautifully. In fact, he dominated the fight to the point where I actually think he did better against Imavov than did a Terence Crawford, which at this point I'm like, maybe Vergil does stand a chance against Terence Crawford. Again, I do believe that Terence Crawford would still edge a win out in that, but As far as the fight last night, Vergil Ortiz did his thing. He went in there and he dominated Imavov. And he made a statement because, again, a lot of people were pointing out the same fact that I'm pointing out. Vergil Ortiz looked way better against Imavov than did a Terence Crawford. So definitely something good for Vergil Ortiz. He did his thing. He's still the champion, held on to his title. And it's going to open up a few doors for Vergil Ortiz that he didn't previously have open. And now people are going to start to ask that question. Can he hang in there with Terence Crawford? It'll be interesting. We'll do an analysis of that if that fight ever comes to fruition or if there's at least talks about it. But, Vergil Ortiz went in there. He did his thing. He dominated Imavov. And shout out to Imavov too, man. Imavov also taking a tough opponent in Vergil Ortiz. But it just goes to show you, man, Vergil Ortiz was out for a few years. He had a lot of health issues that he was dealing with. And the dude didn't take one light fight coming back, man. He jumped in there with sharks. And this goes to prove that Vergil Ortiz is willing to fight anyone. And again, he's been calling out Terence Crawford for quite some time. So again, shout out to Vergil Ortiz. Shout out to his team. Shout out to Golden Boy because I know they manage him. They did their thing last night when it came to Vergil Ortiz. And I'm glad to see someone that deserves a win like Vergil Ortiz do his thing. But what do you think about that, my man?
I think credit should definitely go to both fighters. The fact that Imavov is basically... The fact that Vergil Ortiz is using Imavov as a sort of litmus test for going up against Terence Crawford, and Terence Crawford's, again, his performance against Imavov, it's not very unlike the strategy that David Beterbiev is actually trying to do when he specifically said that he would fight either Bivol or Beterbiev. But the fact that he specifically wants to outline fighting against Bivol and try and say, look, I'm better than Canelo. Look who he couldn't beat, and look how I beat him. That's the exact same thing that Vergil Ortiz basically kind of proved with his performance against Imavov. But again, Imavov in and of himself, the fact that he was able to give this much pressure to one of the number one pound-for-pound fighters of all time, and even then, Vergil Ortiz, even though he did his thing, he still had a little bit of a trickiness going in, fighting in the ring. But the fact that Vergil Ortiz, again, was still able to outperform somebody that gave a little bit of trouble to one of the number one pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Honestly, all three, more so Imavov and Vergil Ortiz, not so much Terence Crawford because he had a little bit of difficulty against Imavov, but just because Imavov ate the L, that doesn't really take away from his performance from last night, and it doesn't even take away his performance against the Terence Crawford fight. If anything, the fact that Vergil Ortiz was trying to use Imavov as a litmus test to go up against Terence Crawford, I think if anything, that should at least be a compliment to Imavov and his ring prowess right there. So honestly, shout out to both of these men in this fight. Even though Imavov, again, he suffered an L, the fact of the matter is, the fact that he was used as a litmus test for all this, I think that in and of itself is props for his performance going on. I'm excited to see Imavov's performance from here on out. And again, shout out to Vergil Ortiz for getting that dub.
Definitely. Couldn't agree with you more. I do think it does show a lot for Terence Crawford, for Vergil Ortiz, and for Imavov. I think they're all very tough dudes. Shout out to all three of them. Now let's get on to the main event. Obviously, we did our pre-fight analysis. I had picked Bivol to win, and you know what's funny? Everything that I said in that analysis proved to be right. Bivol went in there, and if you watch the fight, he went in there trying. He knew this is my last shot. If I don't get it now, that's it. And you know what's funny? It showed in a number of different ways. He was more willing to throw. He was more willing to let go of a little bit of that defense. He was more willing to take risks, and it proved last night that it won in the fight. Now, some people have it a lot closer than others. I do believe it was close enough to where a third fight is warranted, even though Beterbiev is getting on in age. I do think that because of everything that I saw last night, I believe that the game plan that I personally laid out for Bivol, that he would have to do if he wanted to win, I feel like he followed that to a T. He was more aggressive. He let go of his hands more. He didn't worry so much about the defense. Yeah, he got caught here and there, obviously. But again, there was a sense of urgency that I talked about previously that he needed to kind of enforce in there. Because again, if he would have lost this one, no one would be asking for a third. It would have been, it wouldn't matter how close this one would be, no one would be asking for a third. And given the fact that Bivol was feeling the heat after he got his hand raised. I believe it was majority decision. After he got his hand raised, it showed because he saw his opportunity to become undisputed leaving, and there a lot of emotion came out after he won, as he deserves, because he himself said that he's been working a lot. He had to deal with a lot last year. And he was finally glad to be able to call himself the undisputed champion. Shout out to him. But listen, again, all the things that I talked about, the urgency, the having to let the hands go, to take more risks, to be more of an aggressor this time around, all the things that I outlined in the previous fight analysis, it all came through. And again, the reason that I pick those specific things is you got to get in the mind of these boxers sometimes, because the reality of it is, if I was a Bivol right before this second fight, I know that people would be saying, hey, look, man, you lost. If you lose again, that's it. I'm sure his team stressed that to him. I'm sure his coaches stressed that to him, and I'm sure he knew that even though it was going to be riskier, especially up against a guy like Beterbiev who throws a lot of that power, he knew that he was going to have to let go of them hands and just take the risk. And listen, it paid off for him. Again, I picked Bivol to win. I'm glad that he did. We're potentially going to see a third one. The only thing that worries me a little bit is, again, by the time we get to another one, Beterbiev is going to be another year older or close to another year older. And listen, man, even someone as tough as Beterbiev, man, you can't beat Father Time. Nobody beats Father Time. So it'll be interesting to see if another one happens. But what do you think about that, my man?
You definitely were right. It was a majority decision. It was 116, 112, 115, 113, and 114, 114 in favor of, obviously, Dimitri Bivol. And listen, the fact that even the first fight was kind of split, but still majority for Beterbiev, and then split majority for Bivol in the second round, it goes to show, even if Bivol is the younger buck going in this scenario, and even if Beterbiev is the older grizzled veteran, the fact that it's still this close between both of these men, I think I would be more giving respect to Beterbiev for his results in the ring. Even if he lost, it was still a close match. He was missing about 2 points in the judges' scorecard, and that's the reason. The fact that one judge was tied up in the scorecards made it seem like, okay, yeah, they ran it back, and yes, it was more decisive for Bivol in this round, but it was still pretty close. And again, for as a grizzled vet as Beterbiev is, the fact that he was still able to pull it this close, yeah, a trilogy is about to come. And even if Beterbiev was a little bit salty and wasn't willing to give the shake of the hand and any of the respect in the post-fight ring shenanigans, he still said on social media, yeah, we're going to run it back. I'm going to get my revenge next time. Which, again, the fire in Beterbiev, again, he's salty about this one, and respect should be given. He should be salty. The fact that two judges had 1 point each going against his favor, and it was still this razor thin close, and he lost the title, I would be incensed too. But again, this isn't to diminish Bivol's dub right here. Again, both of these men are phenomenal competitors. But the fact that it was this close, I can understand the frustration on both these men. I can understand the frustration in Bivol's frustration with the first match being this razor thin, and I can understand Beterbiev's frustration with it being this thin. But the fact that it's this thin between both of these men, it shows the caliber of athleticism that we have from both of these men, and especially somebody as old as Beterbiev. I believe, what is he, 41, 40? Yeah, around that age. The fact that he's still able to give it this close to a young buck like this, phenomenal performance on his end. Both of these men, Depp, absolutely deserve a dub. Wouldn't be mad if it goes either way in the third trilogy fight. I'm absolutely here for it. I think everybody is here for it. Again, shout out to both of these gentlemen in this fight.
Yeah, man. Listen, I wouldn't be mad at a third fight. I think people are starting to get a little bit of fatigue from these types of fights. But I wouldn't be mad at a third fight. I think the hardcore fans would definitely appreciate it. Maybe not so much the casuals. But listen, one thing that we also got to pay attention to is Benavidez was promised the winner. So while I do agree that given how close it was, they should run it back again. I do think that there's also you can make an argument for Benavidez. Benavidez, again, he won his last fight and he was promised the winner of this fight. Again, we all kind of knew that if Bivol won, there was more than likely going to be a trilogy because you can't leave it as is. You got to get a definitive answer, and the third fight would give us that definitive answer, unless of course it came down to a draw, which would be insane. But anyways, regardless, we would get a definitive answer. That being said, unfortunately for Benavidez, he might have to wait out, and that's a tough thing for Benavidez, man. He had to wait for Canelo. He has to potentially wait for the winner of Bivol, Beterbiev, and he just kind of stuck in the middle, which kind of sucks for him. But it is what it is, man. Either way, it was a great card, even with the last minute replacement in two of the bigger fights that people wanted to see. I think that everyone did their thing. Everyone performed appropriately. Little bit of talk that I didn't want to see from a couple fighters here and there, but listen, you should believe in yourself as a fighter. You should be cocky to a certain degree, and you should bring the heat. So I'm not too mad at that. We'll see how it goes, man. We'll see how it goes. Again, it was a great fight. Shout out to Turkey Al-Sheikh. Shout out to the fighter. Shout out to the late replacements especially. And we'll keep you guys tuned with what we see next. We'll bring up a couple more topics. And if there's any topics that you guys ever want us to talk about, please put it in the comments. We're more than willing to help you guys out and talk about those things. And with that, make sure to like, comment, hate, subscribe, DM us about the bullshit, and
Until next time, get rest and stay blessed. We'll see you in the next one.